The city always sounded different at night. During the day it screamed horns, vendors, engines, but at night it whispered. Streetlights flickered like tired stars as the last bus crawled to a stop. Eli stood there with his backpack slung over one shoulder, counting coins in his palm, hoping they would be enough. A black sedan pulled up behind him, smooth and quiet, its windows tinted. From it stepped Mira, adjusting her coat like the cold offended her. She glanced at the bus schedule, frowned, and sighed. The last bus had been delayed again. They didn't speak. Two students from the same school, bound by nothing except exhaustion and the same destination. When the bus finally arrived, nearly empty, they took separate seats, far apart, carrying different worlds on their backs. Eli always sat near the back, where the lights were dimmer and the seats more forgiving. His neighborhood came first, cracked sidewalks, shuttered shops, familiar struggle. He watched buildings decay through the window like memories people wanted to forget. Mira sat near the front, earbuds in, scrolling through messages she barely read. Her world was gated communities and quiet streets, but tonight, she felt oddly displaced. She wasn't used to public buses or the way people avoided eye contact. When the bus hit a pothole, she stumbled, nearly falling. Eli reached out instinctively and steadied her. Their eyes met, brief, surprised, human. She whispered a thank you. It was small, but something shifted. They began sharing the ride without planning it. Same seats, same time, same quiet. The bus became a moving bubble where the city slowed down enough to breathe. Some nights they spoke. Mostly, they didn't. Yet silence between them never felt empty. It felt safe. Eli liked how Mira listened when he talked, even when he spoke about nothing important. Mira liked how Eli never tried to impress her. No boasting. No pretending. Just truth. And in that honesty, she felt lighter. One night, rain streaked the windows like tears the city refused to shed. Mira asked Eli what he wanted after graduation. Money, he said quickly, then paused. Or maybe freedom. She nodded. I thought money was everything too. They laughed softly, surprised at themselves. The bus rolled on, carrying two students slowly unlearning what the world had taught them. The bus broke down 2 stops early. Everyone groaned. Mira hesitated, unsure what to do. Eli shrugged. I walk from here. She surprised herself by saying, me too. They walked under streetlights, shoes tapping rhythmically against wet pavement. Conversation flowed easily now, music, teachers, fears they rarely named. For the first time, Mira didn't feel rich or poor. Just present. Eli pointed out murals painted by kids from his block, bright colors over gray walls. We wanted something beautiful, he said. Mira stopped to stare. It is beautiful. In that moment, Eli realized happiness didn't always come from escape. Sometimes it came from being seen. Myra's phone buzzed constantly, drivers waiting, parents worried. She ignored it. Eli noticed. You don't have to stay. I want to, she replied. That choice lingered with him long after they parted ways. Whispers started. Questions followed. Why was Mira riding the bus? Why was Eli walking her home? They didn't explain. They didn't need to. They began bringing snacks to share. Laughing louder. Sitting closer. The city hadn't changed, but they had. One night, Mira said quietly, these rides, they feel like home. Eli smiled. He felt it too. And for the first time, money didn't seem like the answer anymore. The bus rides had become a rhythm they both depended on. Even the hum of the engine felt comforting, a background score to their quiet companionship. Eli noticed how Myra's laughter, small and hesitant, filled the space like light spilling into shadowed corners. At school, they drifted apart again. Eli stuck with friends who teased him about dreaming too much, while Mira stayed with her group, her smiles careful and selective. But the bus remained theirs, a small, moving world where labels and expectations melted away. Mira began asking questions she had never asked anyone else, about his childhood, the streets he avoided, and the dreams he didn't dare say aloud. Eli answered with honesty, even when the truth made him feel exposed. She listened without judgment. That simple act of attention felt revolutionary. For Eli, it was more precious than validation. For Mira, it was a safe space to witness someone else's reality without interference. One rainy evening, Mira confided her fears about the weight of her family's expectations, the pressure to succeed, to behave, to fit into a life she hadn't chosen. Eli had always assumed wealth meant freedom, but her words made him see otherwise. "Sometimes," she said, eyes tracing the streaked glass, "it feels like I don't even own my life." Eli understood that feeling in a way he hadn't expected. Rain intensified, bouncing off the bus roof. Eli, without thinking, offered his hoodie. Mira hesitated, then accepted it. It smelled faintly of detergent and city nights, too big but comforting. Her smile, soft and private, lingered in his mind long after the bus had emptied, a warmth against the cold reality outside. Rumors at school began to echo louder. Friends whispered about the late rides and strange alliances. Myra's parents insisted on drivers arriving earlier and earlier. She ignored them. Eli noticed the burden pressing down on her shoulders, but remained silent, choosing to protect the peace between them. For the first time, they argued. Their conversations spiraled from dreams to realities, from ambitions to insecurities. Words were sharp, unintended weapons. When Mira exited early, Eli watched the taillights fade, the night closing in around him, heavier than usual. She avoided the bus for 3 long days. Eli tried to convince himself it was insignificant, yet every empty stop, every missing figure, made the city feel hollow. The absence underscored the rhythm she had brought into his life. On the 4th evening, she returned. No apologies, no explanations. They sat in quiet proximity, letting the bus hum between them. Forgiveness was unspoken, a soft, fragile understanding. Eli finally realized happiness wasn't loud or obvious. It didn't demand recognition or validation. It arrived quietly in shared silences, in the small constancy of someone who simply understood. Money, status, and expectation fell away. What remained was enough. As the bus neared their stops, Mira reached for his hand. Just for a moment, a small gesture, almost imperceptible. Yet it contained everything: trust, care, and a bond they hadn't yet named, but both recognized. After that night, holding hands became their quiet secret. Not every ride, just when the bus was empty enough, when the city felt distant. It grounded Eli in a way he hadn't known he needed. Mira noticed how calm she felt beside him. The noise in her head softened. For once, she wasn't rushing toward something. She was arriving. At school, the divide sharpened. Myra's friends asked why she looked tired, why she left early. Eli's friends joked about dreaming too big. Neither defended themselves. Words felt unnecessary. The bus remained the only place where they didn't have to explain who they were becoming. One evening, the bus rerouted due to construction. New streets. New darkness. The unfamiliarity made Mira uneasy. Eli talked her through it, pointing out landmarks, keeping his voice steady. She realized then that safety didn't come from wealth, it came from trust. Myra's parents noticed changes. Her grades slipped slightly. Her smiles became selective. They scheduled dinners she avoided. Eli noticed bruises on his hands from extra shifts. He never mentioned them. Struggle was easier to hide than hope. They talked about the future again, but differently this time. Less arguing. More listening. "What if we don't escape?" Eli asked quietly. "Then we build," Mira replied. The idea settled between them, fragile but real. One night, the bus was crowded and loud. They couldn't sit together. Eli stood near the back, Mira near the front. Yet every turn of the road, every sudden stop, they looked for each other. Distance didn't undo connection. Eli missed an exam helping his mother. He said nothing about it. Mira found out days later. She didn't scold him. She helped him study on the bus, whispering formulas between stops, guarding his future with quiet devotion. Mira skipped a party everyone would talk about for weeks. Instead, she rode the bus, laughing with Eli over cheap snacks. For the first time, she chose joy over image and didn't regret it. The city grew colder. Nights stretched longer. Their rides became a refuge from everything demanding more than they could give. Eli realized happiness wasn't permanent, but it was possible. And that was enough. As winter lights appeared along the streets, Mira rested her head briefly on Eli's shoulder. The bus rolled forward, carrying 2 lives, learning that fulfillment wasn't found at the end of the road, but in the ride itself. The bus rides became sacred. Night after night, they reclaimed the space from the city's chaos. Even when conversations faltered, they existed together without needing words. Eli noticed how Myra's laughter filled the small space like sunlight breaking through clouds. She noticed how his quiet confidence steadied her own restless heart. Myra's parents were growing suspicious. Luxury cars waited outside school, drivers hovering, questions sharp in their eyes. She lied sometimes, saying she had group studies. Eli never asked why she came anyway. He didn't need an explanation. One night, a new student boarded the bus and noticed Mira and Eli. Whispers began again, glances sharper. Eli's jaw tightened, but Mira placed a reassuring hand on his arm. Shared space mattered more than public scrutiny. The city was cold that night. Streetlights reflected in puddles. Mira shivered, and Eli handed her his hoodie without hesitation. The gesture was repeated countless times, each one reinforcing a quiet bond. Words were secondary. Care was enough. Eli began saving every spare coin. He dreamed of something bigger, a plan for freedom, but never spoke it aloud. Mira only noticed small changes, less exhaustion, a more confident step, eyes burning with determination. Mira brought a small notebook one evening. She sketched their neighborhood murals, scenes from their walks, fragments of the city as she saw it. Eli watched in awe, surprised at her ability to capture life without perfection. An argument erupted on the bus one rainy night. About expectations, about money, about dreams too big to share. Both stormed off, leaving the other behind. The rain and the empty seats were witnesses to their frustration, but not their end. The next day, Mira avoided the bus. Eli felt it in every corner of the city, in every moment of silence between classes. Absence sharpened the value of presence. Words didn't matter, return mattered. She returned quietly on Thursday. No apologies. No explanations. They sat together, side by side. The city rolled by like it had no right to intrude on this fragile peace. Forgiveness passed between them without a single word. One night, near the far edge of town, they watched the skyline from the bus window. Neon lights shimmered across their faces. Eli realized, again, that fulfillment wasn't wealth, fame, or escape. It was this: shared moments, quiet understanding, and the small, steady warmth of someone who truly saw you. Spring crept into the city quietly. The air felt lighter, but decisions felt heavier. Graduation posters appeared on school walls, reminders that time was no longer stretching, it was narrowing. On the bus, Eli and Mira spoke less about feelings and more about plans. Not because the feelings were gone, but because naming them made the future feel too real. Eli received an offer for a paid apprenticeship across the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it promised stability. He folded the letter into his backpack, unsure whether to celebrate or grieve. Mira listened as he told her, pride and fear mixing in her chest. The route would change. The rides might end. Myra's parents presented her future like a finished painting, college abroad, no gaps, no detours. She nodded through dinner, her smile practiced. Later that night, on the bus, she admitted she felt like she was being carried somewhere she hadn't chosen. Eli didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. They argued again, more quietly this time. About distance. About timing. About whether love survived change or required sameness. Neither won. But neither walked away. The city felt different as summer approached. Louder. Faster. Like it was urging them forward whether they were ready or not. Mira began sketching fewer murals and more people. Eli noticed he was in many of them. Eli took the apprenticeship. His hours shifted. Some nights he missed the bus entirely. When he did show up, exhausted, Mira waited anyway. Presence, they learned, was sometimes enough. Mira applied for a local program without telling her parents. It wasn't rebellion, it was honesty. For the first time, her future felt like hers. She told Eli on the bus, hands shaking. He smiled like she'd just given him something precious. Their rides grew fewer, but deeper. Conversations stretched into silence without fear. They no longer needed constant proof of what they were to each other. The city kept moving. So did they. One evening, the bus took them to the edge of the route, where the skyline softened and the streets grew quieter. They stayed seated even after the doors opened. Neither wanted to say goodbye to a chapter that had saved them. Mira rested her head on Eli's shoulder again, like she had months ago. It felt different now, not fragile, but steady. They didn't know exactly where they were going, but they knew they weren't running anymore. And that felt like fulfillment. Graduation arrived quietly, like a breath held too long and finally released. Caps and gowns filled the schoolyard, laughter floating above nervous smiles. Eli stood among his classmates, adjusting borrowed shoes, feeling both proud and unsure. Mira found him in the crowd. When their eyes met, everything else blurred. For a moment, they were back on the bus, just two people choosing each other in a moving world. They didn't sit together during the ceremony. Families claimed their space. Futures claimed their attention. Still, Eli felt Myra's presence like a steady warmth at his side. When names were called, applause rose. When it was over, the city seemed to exhale with them. That evening, they rode the bus again. Maybe for the last time. The seats felt smaller, the windows more reflective. Every stop carried memory. Mira traced shapes on the glass. Eli watched her, realizing that love didn't need permanence to be real. It only needed truth. Eli spoke first. About the apprenticeship becoming a full offer. About staying in the city. About building something slow but honest. Mira listened, then told him about her parents finally hearing her, not agreeing fully, but listening. That felt like victory. They stepped off the bus together at the far end of the route. The city stretched wide before them, lights humming like distant stars. For the first time, neither felt afraid of what came next. Myra's parents met Eli properly one evening. It was awkward, then human, then surprisingly warm. Eli realized then that belonging wasn't about class, it was about care. On a familiar street, Eli showed Mira a small studio space he hoped to rent someday. She smiled like she already lived there. Dreams didn't feel distant anymore. They felt reachable. One night, they walked past the old bus stop. The streetlight still flickered. The bench was still cracked. Mira squeezed Eli's hand. "This saved us," she said. He nodded, it had. They stood there quietly, city moving around them, no rush, no fear. Happiness didn't arrive loudly. It settled, warm, earned, and real. And this time, it stayed. The city didn't pause just because their lives were changing. Buses still ran late. Sirens still echoed. People still hurried past without noticing two young adults learning how to stand on their own. Eli started working full-time. The days were long, his hands often sore, but there was pride in earning something real. Mira watched him grow steadier, more certain, and felt something close to awe. Myra's program began quietly. No dramatic send-off. Just an acceptance email and a long exhale she didn't know she'd been holding. She told her parents again, not asking this time, but explaining. There were tears. There were arguments. There was silence. But there was also something new, respect. They didn't ride the bus every night anymore. Life pulled them in different directions. Sometimes days passed without seeing each other. When they did meet, it felt intentional. Chosen. Stronger than routine. One evening, they walked the old route instead of riding it. Same streets. Same lights. Different pace. They laughed at how small everything felt now and how big it had once seemed. Growth, they realized, didn't erase the past. It honored it. Eli rented the small studio he once only imagined. Bare walls. Folding chairs. Hope everywhere. Mira helped him paint. They got it wrong twice. It didn't matter. Myra's parents visited one afternoon. The space was modest, honest. Eli met their eyes without shrinking. That night, Mira cried, not from pain, but from relief. Time passed the way it always does, quietly, steadily. They learned how to disagree without fear, how to apologize without pride. Love wasn't fireworks. It was showing up tired, staying, choosing again. On a warm evening, they sat on the bus one last time, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to. The city moved outside the windows. Inside, everything felt complete. At the old stop, Eli took Myra's hand and didn't let go. No speech. No promise that tried to outrun reality. Just truth. They walked forward together, not rich, not finished, not certain of everything, but fulfilled. Because happiness wasn't something they chased anymore. It was something they built and kept building side by side.